Commander Veth had seen many terrible things in his long life. He had fought in wars that burned across entire star systems. He had watched his soldiers die on frozen moons and burning deserts. He had faced enemies that would make most beings go mad with fear. But nothing had ever scared him like this moment. His daughter Lyra lay on the medical table, and she was dying. The medical bay of the warship Crimson Tide was cold and quiet. The lights above made everything look pale and lifeless. Veth stood beside his daughter, his large hands gripping the edge of the table so hard that his knuckles turned white. Lyra was only 12 cycles old. She was small for her age, with soft blue skin that usually glowed with health and happiness. But now her skin had turned gray, like ash from a dead fire. Thal, the ship's medical officer, worked quickly around her. His 4 eyes moved constantly, checking readings on screens and adjusting tubes that pumped medicine into her tiny body. But Veth could see the truth in those eyes. Thal was scared too. "Tell me," Veth said. His voice was rough, like stones scraping together. Thal stopped working. He did not look at his commander. "The toxin is spreading faster than I thought possible. She ate seeds from a Nora plant during our surface mission. I did not know she had wandered away from the group. By the time we found her, she had already eaten several." Veth closed his eyes. They had stopped on that small green planet to collect water and food supplies. It was supposed to be a simple mission. Safe. He had even allowed Lyra to come along because she had begged him for weeks. She wanted to see a real planet, to feel grass under her feet and breathe air that did not come from machines. And now she was dying because of it. "How long?" Veth asked. 6 hours. Perhaps 7 if we are fortunate. Thal finally looked at him. "Commander, I'm sorry. I have tried everything I know. The toxin attacks her blood and her lungs at the same time. Her body cannot fight it alone, and I have no medicine that can help. There must be something." Veth grabbed Thal by the front of his medical coat. "You are the best doctor in the fleet. You have saved hundreds of soldiers. You will save my daughter." Thal did not pull away. He understood the pain that drove his commander's anger. "There is one possibility," he said slowly. "The toxin can be stopped by a special enzyme. It is a simple compound, but it does not exist in Kelrani blood. Only a few species in the entire galaxy carry it naturally. Then we find one of those species. We fly to them right now. The closest world with such beings is 9 hours away at maximum speed. We would not arrive in time." Veth released Thal and turned away. He could not look at his daughter. He could not watch her chest rise and fall with each difficult breath. He could not see her small fingers twitch as her body fought against a poison that was killing her from the inside. He had failed her, just as he had failed her mother. Lyra's mother, Sella, had been the love of Veth's life. She had been a warrior too, fierce and beautiful. She died in the border wars when Lyra was only 3 cycles old. A human missile had destroyed her ship. Veth had held on to his hatred for humans for years after that. He had sworn to destroy them all someday, but that was before he learned that war was more complicated than simple hatred. Humans were not evil. They were just different, strange, emotional in ways that made no sense to the logical Kelrani mind. Now his daughter would die on a ship far from home, and there was nothing he could do. The door to the medical bay slid open with a soft hiss. Veth turned to see his communication officer, a young Kelrani named Paul, rushing inside. Paul was breathing hard, which meant he had run all the way from the bridge. "Commander," Paul said between breaths, "we have detected another vessel nearby." "I do not care about other vessels," Veth growled. "Leave me alone. Sir, it is a human ship." Veth went very still. A human ship. Here, in the middle of empty space, light years from any human colony. What were the chances of such a thing? What kind of ship? He asked. A small cargo vessel. It is called the Wandering Star. They are heading toward the Andrus colony. Paul hesitated. Commander, humans carry the enzyme. Their blood contains exactly what we need to save Lyra. The words hit Veth like a physical blow. Humans. The species he had spent years hating. The species that had killed his wife. They were the only ones who could save his daughter. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Hail them, Veth commanded. Paul looked surprised. Sir, they may not respond. Our two species have not been at war for 30 years, but there is still much distrust. They may think it is a trap. Then make them understand it is not a trap. Tell them. Veth paused. The next words were the hardest he had ever spoken. Tell them we need their help. Tell them a child is dying. Paul nodded and hurried out of the room. Veth turned back to his daughter. He reached out and touched her forehead. Her skin was cold and damp with sweat. She looked so small, so fragile. When she was born, she had fit entirely in one of his hands. He had been terrified of holding her, afraid that his warrior's strength would hurt her. Now he would do anything to see her open her eyes again. Hold on, little star, he whispered. It was the name he had called her since she was a baby. Help is coming. I promise you, help is coming. He did not know if he was lying. He did not know if the humans would answer. He did not know if they would help even if they did answer. But for the first time in hours, Commander Veth allowed himself to hope. Somewhere in the darkness of space, a small human cargo ship changed course. It turned toward the Kelrani warship, toward a desperate father and his dying daughter. And everything was about to change. The Wandering Star was not a beautiful ship. It was old and worn, with patches of rust on its metal skin and engines that made strange noises when they worked too hard. But it flew well enough, and it had carried Dr. Emily Walker across the galaxy for the past 5 years. Emily was sitting in the small kitchen area when the message came through. She was drinking coffee from a chipped mug and reading medical reports on her tablet. The coffee was cold, but she did not notice. She was too focused on her work. Marcus, her pilot, came into the kitchen with a strange look on his face. He was a tall man with dark skin and gray hair at his temples. He had been flying ships since before Emily was born, and very few things surprised him anymore. But right now, he looked truly shocked. We got a distress call, he said. Emily put down her tablet. From where? The nearest station is 2 days away. Not from a station. From a Kelrani warship. Emily blinked. A Kelrani warship sent us a distress call? Not just any distress call. They say they have a sick child on board. They need a human doctor. Marcus crossed his arms over his chest. I told him I would ask you, but Emily, think about this carefully. The Kelrani tried to destroy Earth's colonies 30 years ago. They killed millions of people. My own grandfather died in those attacks. Emily stood up from her chair. What is wrong with the child? Something called neurotoxin. The kid ate some poisonous seeds on a planet's surface mission. They say only human blood has the enzyme needed to neutralize it. Neurotoxin. Emily had heard of it before. She had treated a human colonist for the same thing years ago. It was a nasty poison that attacked the body from multiple directions at once. Without treatment, it was always fatal. How long does the child have? They said about 5 hours now. Emily was already moving toward her medical supply room. Change course. Get us to that ship as fast as possible. Marcus did not move. Emily, did you hear what I said? These are Kelrani. They are not our friends. This could be a trap. They might be trying to capture a human doctor for experiments or something. Emily stopped and turned to face him. Her eyes were hard and determined. Marcus, there's a child dying on that ship. A child. I do not care what species she is. I do not care what her people did 30 years ago. She did not attack anyone. She did not start any wars. She's just a little girl who made a mistake and ate something she should not have. And if it is a trap, then it is a trap, and I will deal with it when it happens. But I am not going to let a child die because I was too scared to try. Emily softened her voice. I became a doctor to save lives, Marcus. All lives. That is not something I can turn off just because the patient has blue skin instead of pink. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and shook his head. You are going to get yourself killed one day. Maybe, but not today. Emily smiled at him. Now please change course. We do not have much time. An hour later, the Wandering Star docked with the Kalrani warship, Crimson Tide. Emily stood at the airlock with her medical bag over her shoulder. She was not a large woman. She was average height, with brown hair she kept tied back and eyes that had seen too much sadness. But she stood straight and steady, ready to face whatever waited on the other side. The airlock door opened, and Emily stepped into the Kalrani ship Dot. She was immediately surrounded by soldiers. They were huge, easily 7 feet tall, with blue-gray skin and eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. They wore armor and carried weapons that looked like they could blow a hole through a planet. Every single one of them was staring at her with suspicion. Emily did not run. She did not even step back. She simply stood there and waited. A Kalrani, even larger than the others, pushed through the crowd. He wore a commander's uniform, and his face was like stone. But his eyes told a different story. His eyes were filled with fear and pain and desperate hope. You are the doctor? He asked. His voice was deep and rough. I am Dr. Emily Walker. Take me to your daughter. Something flickered across the commander's face. Surprise, perhaps. Or maybe relief that she had not asked questions or made demands. Follow me, he said. They walked through the ship in silence. Emily noticed that every Kalrani they passed stopped to stare at her. Some looked curious. Others looked hostile. But none of them tried to stop her or hurt her. The medical bay was at the center of the ship. When Emily walked inside, her heart tightened in her chest. The child on the table was so small. She could not have been older than 10 or 11 in human years. Her skin was gray and lifeless, and her breathing was shallow and weak. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that beeped with warning sounds. Emily moved to the child's side immediately. She pulled out her scanner and began checking the readings. The Kalrani doctor, a being with 4 eyes who introduced himself as Thal, watched her closely. The toxin has spread to 60% of her organs, Emily said after a moment. Her lungs are failing. Her blood is becoming toxic. She looked up at the commander. I can help her, but it will not be easy. And it will not be safe. For either of us, what do you need? The commander asked. Human blood contains an enzyme that can neutralize neurotoxin. But I cannot simply give her my blood directly. It would kill her. I need to extract the enzyme, purify it, and give it to her slowly over several hours. Emily began unpacking her medical supplies. During that time, I will need to donate more blood than is strictly healthy. I will become weak. I may lose consciousness. But if we do this correctly, your daughter will live. The commander stared at her. You would do this? You would hurt yourself to save a Kalrani child? Emily looked at the little girl on the table. She thought of another little girl years ago, with blonde hair and a laugh like music. Yes, she said simply. I would. She did not explain further. There was no time for explanations. The work had to begin now. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the gentle hum of the filtration device. Emily sat in a chair beside Lyra's bed. A tube ran from her arm to the machine, carrying her blood out of her body. The machine separated the enzyme from the blood and then sent the rest back into her veins. It was a slow process, painful and exhausting. Emily had been sitting there for 3 hours now. Her skin had grown pale, and her hands shook slightly when she lifted them. Dark circles had formed under her eyes. But every time she looked at the monitors showing Lyra's vital signs, she saw small improvements. The child's breathing was becoming stronger. Her skin was slowly regaining some color. It was working. Commander Veth had not left the room since the procedure began. He sat on the other side of his daughter's bed, watching everything with sharp eyes. Sometimes he looked at Lyra with such tenderness that Emily's heart ached. Other times he looked at Emily with an expression she could not understand. It was not hatred or suspicion. It was something else entirely, confusion perhaps, or wonder. The door opened, and Thal entered, carrying a tray of food and water. He set it on a small table beside Emily. "You must eat," he said. "Your body needs fuel to replace what it is losing." Emily nodded and reached for the water with a trembling hand. She drank slowly, feeling the cool liquid move down her throat. It helped a little, but she still felt weak. Weaker than she had ever felt before. Thal checked the readings on the machines and made some adjustments. "The child's organs are stabilizing. At this rate, she should reach the safe zone within 3 more hours. 3 more hours," Emily repeated. She was not sure her body could last that long, but she would try. She would try until she had nothing left to give. Thal left the room and silence returned. For a long while, neither Emily nor Veth spoke. The only sounds were the machines and Lyra's gentle breathing. Then, Veth asked a question that had been burning inside him since the moment Emily arrived. "Why?" Emily looked up at him. "Why what? Why? Are you doing this?" Veth's voice was rough with emotion he was trying to hide. "We are not your people. We have been enemies for generations. My kind has killed humans. We burned your colonies and destroyed your ships. Yet you sit here, draining your own blood to save a child you have never met. A child of your enemies." Emily was quiet for a moment. She looked at Lyra's small face, at the way her tiny fingers curled slightly on the blanket. Then she spoke, her voice soft and tired. "I had a daughter once." Veth went very still. Her name was Grace. She was 7 years old when she died. We were living on a frontier colony, far from any major medical centers. There was a fever going around, a new disease that no one understood. Emily's eyes grew distant, looking at something far away. By the time we realized how sick she was, it was too late. The medicine we needed was 3 days away. She died in my arms on the second night. The silence that followed was heavy and thick. "I am sorry," Veth said. The words seemed inadequate, but they were all he had. After Grace died, I could not stay on that colony anymore. Everything reminded me of her. Her toys in the corner, her drawings on the wall, the sound of her laughter that I could still hear sometimes in the middle of the night. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her free hand. So I left. I went back to medical school. I studied harder than I had ever studied before. I learned everything I could about diseases and poisons and injuries. I swore that I would never let another parent feel what I felt. Not if I could help it. She looked directly at Veth now. Her tired eyes met his ancient warrior's gaze. "It does not matter what species you are, Commander. A parent's love is the same everywhere. So is their grief. I look at you, and I see myself from years ago. I see a father who would give anything to save his child. I see a parent facing the worst moment of their life." She paused. "I could not save Grace, but I can save Lyra. And that is enough reason for me." Veth did not know what to say. For the first time in his life, words completely failed him. He had spent years hating humans. He had blamed them for his wife's death. He had told himself that they were cold and cruel and without honor. But the woman sitting in front of him was none of those things. She was kind and brave and willing to sacrifice herself for a stranger's child. Perhaps he had been wrong about humans. Perhaps he had been wrong about many things. The hours passed slowly. Emily grew weaker and weaker. Her blood pressure dropped to dangerous levels. The color drained from her face until she looked almost like a ghost. But she refused to stop. Every time Marcus called from the wandering star, begging her to end the procedure, she shook her head. "Not yet," she would whisper. "Almost there." Word of what was happening spread through the ship. Kelrani crew members began appearing at the medical bay door. They did not enter, but they watched through the window. They watched the small human woman give her blood for a child that was not her own. Some of them brought gifts. A blanket made from soft fabric. A cup of warm broth that Tal helped Emily drink. A small stone carved into the shape of a flower. They left these things by the door, silently, and then walked away. By the 5th hour, Emily could barely keep her eyes open. Her head kept dropping forward, and she would jerk awake with a gasp. But the monitors showed that Lyra was almost out of danger. Just a little more. Just a little longer. "You can stop now," Thal said gently. "She has enough enzyme in her system. Her body can fight the rest of the toxin on its own." Emily looked at the readings. She looked at Lyra. Then, finally, she nodded. Too removed the tube from her arm and bandaged the wound. The moment he finished, Emily slumped in her chair. Her eyes closed, and she did not open them again. She had given everything she had. Now all they could do was wait. 6 hours and 23 minutes after the procedure began, Lyra opened her eyes. At first, she did not know where she was. The ceiling above her looked strange and unfamiliar. Bright lights shone down on her, and she could hear the soft beeping of machines nearby. Her body felt heavy and tired, like she had been sleeping for a very long time. Then she remembered. The planet with the green grass and blue sky. The pretty seeds that looked like little stars. The way they had tasted sweet on her tongue before everything went dark. "Father?" she called out. Her voice was weak and scratchy. Suddenly, a large hand wrapped around her tiny fingers. She turned her head and saw her father sitting beside her. His face was tired and worn, with deep lines around his eyes that she had never noticed before. But when he looked at her, his eyes filled with tears. Commander Veth, the fearsome warrior who had never shown weakness in front of anyone, was crying. "I am here, little star," he said. His voice broke on the words. "I am here. You are safe now." Lyra squeezed his hand as hard as she could. "I am sorry, Father. I should not have wandered away. I should not have eaten those seeds. Shh." Veth leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. It was a Kelrani gesture of deep love. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You are alive. That is all that matters." They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter, united after the worst night of their lives. Then Lyra noticed something strange. There was someone else in the room with them. A small figure was slumped in a chair on the other side of her bed. It was not a Kelrani. It was something she had only seen in pictures and videos before. A human. "Father, who is that?" Lyra whispered. Veth lifted his head and looked at Emily. The human doctor was unconscious, her face pale and her breathing shallow. Thal had covered her with a warm blanket and was monitoring her vital signs closely. "That is the person who saved your life," Veth said. Lyra stared at Emily with wide eyes. She knew about humans. Her teachers had told her that humans were strange and dangerous creatures. They were emotional and unpredictable. Some Kelrani said they were enemies who could never be trusted. But this human did not look dangerous. She looked small and tired and sick. "Is she going to be okay?" Lyra asked. "Thal says she will recover, but she gave a lot of her blood to save you." She made herself very weak so that you could be strong again. Lyra did not fully understand. Why would she do that? She does not know me. Veth was quiet for a moment. He thought about what Emily had told him about her daughter Grace. He thought about the way she had pushed herself beyond all safe limits, refusing to stop until Lyra was out of danger. Because that is what humans do, he said finally. They help others, even strangers, even enemies. It does not make sense to us, but it is who they are. Lyra looked at Emily for a long time. Then she made a decision. I want to thank her, she said. When she wakes up, I want to thank her properly. You will, Veth promised. You will. 2 days passed. Emily remained unconscious for most of that time. Her body needed rest to recover from everything she had given. The Kelrani crew took turns, watching over her, making sure she had everything she needed. It was strange to see. Fierce warriors who had fought in countless battles stood guard over a sleeping human woman. They treated her with respect and gentleness, as if she were one of their own. When Emily finally woke up, she found herself in a private cabin. The room was small but comfortable, with soft lighting and warm blankets. Strange flowers filled every corner, their petals glowing softly in shades of purple and gold. Emily sat up slowly. Her body still felt weak, but the terrible exhaustion from before had faded. She looked around the room, trying to understand where she was and what had happened. Then she saw the drawing. It was sitting on her pillow, a piece of paper covered in colorful marks. The drawing showed a tall figure with light-colored hair standing beside a small figure with blue skin. The tall figure had a circle of light around her head, like a halo. Beneath the picture, in shaky handwriting that had been carefully translated into English, were 2 words, "Thank you." Emily picked up the drawing with trembling hands. She stared at it for a long moment, and then she began to cry. They were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief and joy, and something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. The door to the cabin opened, and Veth stepped inside. He looked different now. The hard lines of his face had softened, and his eyes held warmth instead of suspicion. "Dr. Walker," he said, "I'm glad to see you awake." Emily quickly wiped her eyes. "How is Lyra?" "Thanks to you." Veth walked closer and stood beside the bed. "She has not stopped talking about you since she woke up. She says she wants to meet you properly." "I would like that." Veth nodded. Then he did something that surprised Emily completely. He lowered his head in a bow. It was a deep bow, the kind that Kelrani only gave to those they respected above all others. "I owe you a debt I can never repay," he said. "You saved my daughter's life. You risked your own health to help a stranger from a species that has been your enemy. I do not know how to thank you for such a gift." Emily shook her head. "You do not owe me anything, Commander. I did what any doctor should do. I saved a life that needed saving." "No." Veth looked up at her. "You did more than that. You showed me that I was wrong about humans. You showed me that hatred and fear are choices, not destiny. You showed me that kindness can exist between the stars, even in the darkest places." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "My wife was killed by humans in the border wars. I hated your species for years because of it. But now I understand that war is not the same as evil. Soldiers fight because they are told to fight. It does not mean they are monsters." He placed his hand over his heart. "You have changed something inside me, Dr. Walker. Something I thought would never change." Emily did not know what to say. She looked at the drawing in her hands, at the little halo around the figure that was supposed to be her. "I am not a hero," she said quietly. "I am just a doctor who lost her daughter and decided that no other parent should have to feel that pain." "That," Beth said, "is exactly what makes you a hero." The great hall of the Kelrani High Council was a massive chamber carved from black stone. Pillars as thick as ancient trees rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Hundreds of council members sat in curved rows, their blue-gray faces lit by floating orbs of soft light. Commander Veth stood at the center of the hall. He wore his finest uniform, polished and pressed. Beside him stood Lyra, small but proud, her skin once again glowing with healthy color. The entire Empire was watching. The Council had called this meeting to hear Veth's report about what had happened on the Crimson Tide. News of a human saving a Kelrani child had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to know if the rumors were true. "Commander Veth," the High Elder said from his raised seat, "you have requested to address this council. Speak." Veth took a deep breath. This was the most important moment of his life, and he knew it. "Honored council members," he began, "I stand before you today to tell you a story. A story about a night when my daughter almost died, and the unexpected person who saved her." He told them everything. He told them about Lyra eating the Nora seeds and the desperate hours that followed. He told them about the human cargo ship that appeared out of nowhere, like a gift from the stars themselves. He told them about Dr. Emily Walker, a small woman who walked onto a warship full of beings who had once been her enemies, without fear, carrying only a bag of medical supplies. "She gave her blood for my daughter," Veth said. "She sat in a chair for 6 hours, draining herself until she could barely stay conscious. She knew it was dangerous. She knew it might kill her, but she did not hesitate. She did not ask for anything in return. She simply helped." The council chamber was completely silent. Every Kelrani in the room was listening with intense focus. "I have fought humans in battle," Veth continued. "I have watched them die. I have killed them with my own hands. And I hated them for many years because one of their missiles killed my wife." He paused. "But hatred is a poison worse than any Nora toxin. It blinds us. It makes us small. It stops us from seeing the truth." He looked around at the council members, meeting their eyes one by one. "The truth is that humans are not our enemies. They are different from us, yes. They think differently. They feel things more strongly than we do. They make decisions that seem strange and illogical to our minds. But they also have something that I think we have forgotten. They have the ability to care about strangers, to risk themselves for beings they have never met, to cross the darkness of space just because someone needs help." The High Elder leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Commander?" "I am suggesting that we have been wrong about humans. I am suggesting that 30 years of cold peace is not enough. We should not simply avoid war with them. We should learn from them, work with them, build something new together." Whispers filled the hall. Many council members looked shocked. Others looked thoughtful. A few looked angry. But Veth was not finished. "I brought my daughter here today so you could see her with your own eyes. 3 weeks ago, she was dying. Now she is healthy and strong. She is alive because a human woman chose to save her." Veth put his hand on Lyra's shoulder. "When you look at my daughter, you are looking at proof that kindness is stronger than hatred. That compassion can bridge any gap. That the future does not have to look like the past." Lyra stepped forward. She was nervous, but she had practiced what she wanted to say. "The human doctor's name was Emily," Lyra said in her small, clear voice. "She had a daughter like me once, but her daughter died. She became a doctor so that other children would not die. She did not care that I was Kelrani. She only cared that I was a child who needed help." Lyra looked up at the council. "I want to be like her when I grow up. I want to be a doctor who helps everyone, no matter who they are or where they come from." The silence that followed was so deep that you could hear the breathing of every Kelrani in the hall. Then, slowly, the High Elder rose from his seat. He walked down the long stairs to where Veth and Lyra stood. His ancient face was thoughtful, and his eyes held something that looked almost like wonder. "Commander Veth," he said, "your words have given this council much to consider. For too long, we have viewed you humans as a threat to be managed, rather than a species to be understood. Perhaps it is time for that to change." He turned to address the entire hall. "I propose that we open a new chapter in Kelrani-human relations. We will send medical officers to train with human doctors. We will allow human ships free passage through our space. We will begin the slow work of building trust, one act of kindness at a time." The High Elder paused. "And we will remember the name of Dr. Emily Walker, who showed us what humanity truly means." The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. The council approved the new policies by a margin of 9-1. News of the decision spread across the galaxy within hours. 6 months later, the first Kelrani medical officers arrived on Earth. They were nervous and uncertain, unsure of what to expect. But they were greeted with open arms. Human doctors showed them new techniques. Human nurses taught them about patient care. Human children stared at them with curiosity instead of fear. And on a small frontier world called New Hope, a Kelrani girl named Lyra enrolled in a human school. She was the only Kelrani student. At first, the human children did not know what to make of her. They whispered and pointed and kept their distance. But Lyra remembered what Emily had taught her. She remembered that kindness could bridge any gap. So she was kind. She shared her lunch with a boy who forgot his. She helped a girl who was struggling with math. She told stories about her home world that made the other children laugh and ask questions. Within a month, she had more friends than she could count. Far away, on the wandering star, Emily Walker continued her work. She traveled from colony to colony, treating patients of every species. She did not think of herself as a hero or a legend. She was just a doctor doing her job. But across the galaxy, in 100 different languages, her story was told and retold. The story of a human who saved an alien child. The story of a mother who lost everything and found a way to keep giving. The story of hope in the darkness of space. Some stories said she had special powers. Others said she was sent by the gods. The truth was much simpler. She was human. And that was enough. Because in the end, that is what humans do. They show up. They help. They give until they have nothing left, and then they find a way to give some more. They remind the universe that compassion has no borders, and they never, ever stop hoping.